Imagine trusting your weatherman's absolute guarantee of sunshine, only to be swallowed by a freezing storm that costs you your health and your livelihood. What if you sued him for it? And what if you won? Society operates on an intricate, largely invisible web of trust. We trust the structural integrity of the concrete beneath our feet, and we trust the authoritative voices speaking to us through glowing screens. We hand over the meticulous planning of our lives to experts, but when that fundamental trust shatters, causing profound physical trauma and measurable financial damage, who pays the price? This is the unprecedented story of a single citizen who decided to hold the Daily News legally accountable for an act of God. Oakhaven was a sprawling, densely populated metropolis governed strictly by routine. At the very center of that daily routine was Channel 7 News. Their crowning jewel was Chief Meteorologist Marcus Vance. With his flawlessly tailored suits, his unwavering eye contact, and his booming, authoritative tone, Vance did not just predict the weather, he dictated it to millions. His nightly broadcast was treated by the general public not as a scientifically educated guess, but as an infallible, absolute prophecy. On a Tuesday evening in late autumn, the city tuned in seeking desperately needed guidance. The preceding weeks had brought wildly fluctuating, exhausting temperatures. Marcus Vance appeared before a brightly lit, high-resolution digital map, aggressively pointing to a massive high-pressure system. His voice carried unshakable, absolute certainty. He explicitly stated that the next day would bring a glorious, uninterrupted wave of unseasonable warmth. There would be zero clouds, summer-like soaring highs, and a strict, undeniable 0% chance of rain. He even chuckled charmingly, suggesting viewers firmly pack away their winter coats and entirely enjoy the sudden return of summer. Watching this broadcast intently from her apartment was Elena Rostova. She was a freelance architectural designer, a fiercely dedicated professional whose entire livelihood depended solely on the pristine impressions she made on clients. The following day was arguably the most critical juncture of her career. She had finally secured a highly sought-after, extremely lucrative outdoor consultation with a wealthy client at the city's prestigious botanical garden. Relying entirely on Vance's emphatic, televised guarantee, Elena meticulously planned her wardrobe, believing she was preparing for radiant, oppressive heat. She wore a lightweight, breathable silk blouse, a thin linen skirt, and open-toed shoes. She packed no heavy coat, she carried no protective umbrella. When Elena stepped outside her building at 8 the next morning, the air felt deceptively mild. The sky was a pale, ambiguous gray. But trusting the absolute certainty of the broadcast, she assumed the morning clouds would quickly burn off to reveal the blazing sun. She boarded a commuter train, traveling miles away from the safe, warm shelter of her home. But as the clock slowly ticked toward 9 o'clock, the atmosphere above Oakhaven underwent a violent, catastrophic, and completely unpredicted shift. The pale gray sky rapidly bruised into a menacing, dark charcoal. The barometric pressure plummeted so dramatically that citizens felt it in their ears. A biting, freezing wind suddenly swept through the deep concrete canyons of the city, instantly dropping the ambient temperature by nearly 20 degrees in mere minutes. And then, the sky violently broke open. It was not a passing shower. It was an apocalyptic, relentless deluge. Freezing sheets of ice-cold rain slammed into the city, driven completely sideways by howling gale-force winds. Standing in the vast, open expanse of the botanical garden, desperately waiting for a client who would obviously never arrive in such atrocious conditions, Elena was helplessly exposed, her expensive silk blouse immediately soaked through, clinging like ice to her freezing skin. For 45 agonizing minutes, physically trapped in the open while desperately trying to flag down a completely occupied taxi fleet, she endured a brutal elemental assault. Her lips turned blue, and her core body temperature dropped dangerously low. The catastrophic physical damage was already done. That very night, a severe burning fever set in. By the time the sun rose, Elena could not draw a breath without stabbing, sharp chest pains, and emergency medical consultation delivered a grim, undeniable diagnosis. She had contracted a highly aggressive strain of influenza, directly exacerbated by the acute, unprotected exposure to freezing temperatures and driving rain. For the next 2 excruciating weeks, Elena was strictly confined to her bed. The physical suffering was agonizing, but the financial devastation that quickly followed was infinitely worse. The missed consultation at the garden cost her a massive, life-changing contract. Furthermore, the prolonged, debilitating illness forced her to completely cancel 3 other highly lucrative projects. Adding to the misery, massive medical bills for emergency visits and heavy prescription medications began to rapidly drain her already fragile bank account. As the severe fever finally broke after 14 days, Elena's initial despair crystallized into a highly focused, unyielding anger. She realized a crucial distinction. The TV weather forecast had absolutely not been presented as a cautious guess. It was presented as definitive, actionable information designed to influence behavior. And that specific information was catastrophically, negligently, and demonstrably wrong. Elena Rostova defied societal convention. She hired an aggressive litigation lawyer and filed a formal civil lawsuit against Channel 7 News and Marcus Vance personally. She sued them specifically for the physical trauma endured, the mounting medical expenses incurred, and the severe quantifiable loss of income directly resulting from her illness. When the unprecedented lawsuit went public, it was instantly met with mocking, widespread disbelief. The mainstream media mercilessly ridiculed her. Legal commentators dismissed it on national television as the absolute most frivolous lawsuit of the decade. Suing a TV weatherman for unexpected rain was considered legally equivalent to suing a dog for barking. But the remarkable case was not thrown out. It proceeded steadily to a small claims court, eventually landing on the busy docket of the Honorable Judge Silas Thorne. Judge Thorne was a veteran jurist, known not for following the tide of public opinion, but for surgically dissecting precise legal definitions of duty, negligence, and measurable harm. In a courtroom packed shoulder to shoulder, with journalists expecting a comedy, the defense team was highly arrogant and dismissive. They argued eloquently that meteorology is fundamentally a science of shifting probabilities, not absolute certainties. They stated that all weather forecasts contain an implicit, universally understood disclaimer: weather inherently changes. Holding a forecaster legally responsible would instantly destroy the global meteorological reporting industry. Furthermore, they pointed out Elena was a fully grown adult with free will. She should have simply brought an umbrella. Her severe illness, they argued, was a direct result of her own naive lack of preparation. Then, Elena's legal counsel calmly presented their case. They completely bypassed the argument that Vance magically controlled the weather. Instead, they argued the firmly established legal concepts of duty of care and negligent misstatement. They played the broadcast tape for the courtroom, explicitly highlighting Vance's definitive, unwavering tone and the total glaring absence of any cautionary language. The lawyer posed a devastating, brilliant legal parallel. If a licensed financial advisor gives a negligently guaranteed piece of advice that financially bankrupts a client, they are held liable. If a medical doctor gives a demonstrably incorrect diagnosis without proper caution, they are held liable. Why should a highly paid broadcaster who definitively tells the trusting public there is absolutely zero risk of freezing rain, leading directly to physical and financial ruin, be magically immune from the consequences of their negligent absolute certainty? Elena presented her officially stamped medical records, exact financial ledgers showing lost contracts, and physical receipts for all medication. The damages were not vague or theoretical. They were explicitly, undeniably quantifiable. Judge Silas Thorne listened to both sides in absolute terrifying silence. He methodically reviewed the broadcast tapes and the financial records, then retreated to his private chambers to deliberate. When he finally returned to the elevated bench, the entire atmosphere in the room shifted. It felt incredibly heavy. He began by acknowledging that weather is inherently unpredictable. However, he then sharply focused on the specific, undeniable nature of the broadcast in question. The forecast was absolutely not presented to the public as an estimate or a probability. It was aggressively presented as a definitive, unshakable fact. The judge reasoned that by deliberately removing all elements of doubt to artificially boost their authority, the TV network willingly assumed a specific legal level of responsibility. They actively convinced the trusting public to take physical actions based on an ironclad guarantee they couldn't actually back up. Therefore, the network fundamentally failed in its legal duty of care. Then came the hammer drop, the final, shocking verdict. Judge Thorne ruled entirely in favor of Elena Rostova. He formally found the TV network and the meteorologist legally liable for the damages caused by their demonstrably incorrect forecast. The packed courtroom erupted in loud gasps. He legally ordered the defendants to pay Elena exactly $1,000 to completely cover her medical bills and precisely reimburse her lost wages. But he didn't stop merely at financial compensation. Recognizing a profound, damaging breach of public trust, he issued a highly unusual secondary mandate. He directly ordered Marcus Vance to stand before the studio cameras during his primetime broadcast and issue a formal, legally mandated public apology to Elena for severely misleading her and causing her physical illness. The global legal and meteorological worlds were utterly stunned. The impossible precedent had been officially set. The impenetrable shield protecting daily forecasts from legal action had been violently pierced. Overnight, forecasters across the entire world frantically changed their vocabulary. Zero chance was permanently erased. The long-standing era of the absolute weather guarantee died permanently inside that small courtroom. But Oakhaven is a fiction. Marcus Vance and Elena Rostova are pseudonyms. This unimaginable, precedent-setting legal battle happened in stark, undeniable reality. The year was 1996. The country was Israel. The famous meteorologist legally forced to pay financial damages and issue a deeply humiliating primetime apology was Danny Roop, who was at the time Israel's most trusted weather forecaster. A real judge truly ruled that by confidently promising a sunny day and delivering a freezing storm, the forecaster committed an act of legal negligence directly resulting in a woman's severe suffering. It remains to this very day one of the most bizarre and terrifying legal precedents in the entire history of broadcasting. This was Courtroom T. Case closed.